You didn't lose them, you outgrew them, and that terrifies you more than losing ever did. Look at the last 7 days of your life. Not the version you tell people about, not the highlights you replay in your head when you're trying to feel okay about where you are. The real version. The actual sequence of hours and decisions and moments that made up your last week. You woke up with intention, most days. You had a plan, most days. And then the day happened. Someone needed something. The phone pulled you somewhere. A conversation went longer than it should have. You told yourself you'd get to the important thing later, and later became night, and night became tomorrow, and tomorrow is already 3 weeks ago. This is not laziness. Lazy people don't feel the guilt you feel. Lazy people aren't watching this video at this hour with this look on their face. This is something quieter and more dangerous than laziness. This is drift. This is what happens when a sharp person slowly adjusts to a blunt environment. You started matching the pace of the people around you. Not because you agreed with it, but because disagreeing out loud costs too much. It costs conversations. It costs comfort. It costs the version of you that everyone else decided you were. So you went quiet about your ambitions. You stopped mentioning the things you were building. You learned to laugh at the right moments and nod when people talked about things you'd already moved past. You became fluent in a language you no longer speak privately. And the worst part? You got good at it. The performance became so smooth that some days you forget it's a performance, but your results remember. Your bank account remembers. The unfinished project sitting in your notes app remembers. The version of you that started all of this, the one who actually believed something different was possible. That version is still in there, waiting, getting impatient. Here is what no one tells you about staying comfortable in the wrong environment. It doesn't feel like failure. That's the trap. It feels like stability. It feels like being reasonable. It feels like not being the person who takes things too seriously or who makes everyone uncomfortable by wanting more. But here is the mathematics of it, and mathematics doesn't care about your feelings. Every year you spend in an environment that doesn't match where you're going, you don't stay the same. You move backward, not dramatically, not in a way that shows up on any given Tuesday, but in the slow erosion of standards, in the gradual lowering of what you consider acceptable, in the quiet recalibration of your expectations until the thing you once refused to settle for becomes the thing you're grateful for. That's not stability. That's decay with good lighting. Think about the people you admired 5 years ago. The ones who seemed to have something figured out that you hadn't yet. Where are they now? Some of them are still there. Same conversations, same complaints, same plans that never moved past the planning stage, and you watched it happen gradually enough that it didn't alarm anyone, including them. That could be you in 5 years. Not because you aren't capable, you are capable, and somewhere in you, you know exactly how capable you are, but capability without the right environment, without the right inputs, without the pressure of people who actually demand something from you. Capability without those things rusts. You are not behind because you are weak. You are behind because you have been comfortable in a room that was never built for where you're going. The cost of staying isn't just time, it's identity. Every month you spend shrinking yourself to fit a space that's too small, you practice being smaller. And practice, as you know, makes permanent. The question is not whether you can afford to change. The question is whether you can afford another year of not changing. Because the price of that is not paid in a single moment. It is paid in the quiet accumulation of a life that almost happened. Now we need to go somewhere uncomfortable. Because the real problem is not your environment. The environment is just the symptom. The real problem is the story you have been telling yourself about why you haven't left it yet. For some of you, the story is patience. You've told yourself you're being strategic. You're waiting for the right moment. You're building in silence. But here's the distinction between patience and avoidance that most people never examine. Patience moves even when it's slow. Patience is active. Avoidance looks identical from the outside, but it is completely still on the inside. Nothing is being built, nothing is being decided. The waiting is the destination. For others, the story is loyalty. You can't leave these people behind. They were there for you. They're your people. And that's real. That loyalty is not nothing. But loyalty to people is not the same as loyalty to their limitations. You can love someone fully and still refuse to let their ceiling become yours. Those two things are not in conflict, even though everything in you insists they are. And for some of you, and this is the one that requires the most honesty, the story is that you're not ready, that you need one more thing, one more skill, one more course, one more sign that the timing is right. But the pattern you need to examine is this. The goalpost for ready keeps moving. Every time you get close to the thing that would actually push your life forward, a new prerequisite appears. That's not preparation, that is fear, with a productivity mask on. The psychological mechanism underneath all of these stories is the same. It's the fear of becoming unrecognizable to the people you love. Because growth, real growth, changes you. It changes what you talk about, what you tolerate, what you find funny, what you find unacceptable, and the people around you will feel that shift before you even name it. Some of them will celebrate it, most of them will resist it, not because they want you to fail, but because your growth implicitly challenges their stillness. And your nervous system, which is wired for belonging, will feel that resistance as danger. It will dress the danger up as wisdom. It will tell you to slow down, to stay humble, to not get ahead of yourself. It will make smallness feel like virtue. That voice is not wisdom. That voice is the cost of belonging in the wrong room. There are 3 internal recalibrations that separate the people who are moving in 2026 from the people who are watching movement happen to others. These are not tactics. They are not habits. They are identity level shifts, the kind that, once made, make the old version of your thinking feel like a foreign language. The first shift is this. Stop optimizing for approval and start optimizing for alignment. Picture the version of you that exists 3 years from now. The one who made the choices, built the thing, paid the price, and came out the other side with something real. That version of you is not worried about whether the people in your current circle think your decisions make sense. That version of you made choices that didn't make sense to anyone in the room at the time. The shift is learning to use future alignment as your compass instead of present approval. When you have a decision to make, the question is not, what will they think? The question is, does this move me toward the life I am actually building? Or does it keep me in the life I have already outgrown? The second shift. Understand that in 2026, your environment is your output. This is not metaphor. This is mechanical. The conversations you have daily, the content you consume, the voices you allow to define what's normal. These inputs are producing your results with the same inevitability that a factory produces its product. You cannot think at the level required by your goals while feeding your mind inputs designed for someone else's reality. This means auditing, ruthlessly, what you expose yourself to. Not to be precious or superior, but because you are in a race against your own potential. And distractions in 2026 are more sophisticated, more targeted, and more addictive than they have ever been. Your focus is the most valuable thing you own. Protect it like it is the only currency that matters, because right now, it is. The third shift. Embrace the loneliness of the transition as data, not as a signal to stop. When you start growing at a speed that separates you from your environment, The loneliness that follows is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It is a sign that you are doing something real. Growth at the level you're capable of is not a social activity. The people who changed their lives did not do it in rooms full of people cheering them on. They did it in quiet rooms, at strange hours, with no guarantee that it would work, surrounded by people who thought they were making a mistake. The loneliness is the evidence. It means you have moved far enough from where you were that the old landscape no longer feels like home. That discomfort is not a problem to solve. It is a passage to move through. The people who are winning right now are not more talented than you. They are more willing to be misunderstood. There are two people who started from the same place 12 months ago. Same background, same city, same kind of job, same kind of friends, same kind of potential, sitting dormant, waiting to be activated. The first person decided to wait. Not consciously, no one consciously decides to wait. They just kept doing what was comfortable. They kept consuming instead of building. They stayed in the conversations that felt safe. They told themselves that next quarter, next year, when things settled down, they would make the move they kept talking about making. The second person made one uncomfortable decision, just one. They stopped waiting for the environment to approve of their next move, and they made it anyway. They started the thing. They had the conversation. They cut the habit. They began imperfectly, quietly, without announcement. 12 months later, those two people are not in the same place anymore. The gap between them is not enormous in visible terms, not yet. But the direction of their lives has diverged in a way that compounds every single day. One of them is building something with momentum. The other is building a more elaborate reason for why now is still not the right time. In 2026, the speed of that divergence is faster than it has ever been. The tools available to people who are moving create leverage that was not possible 3 years ago. The gap between someone using those tools with intention and someone who isn't is not a slight advantage. It is a structural separation that widens every week the decision is delayed. You know which of those two people you are right now. You don't need anyone to tell you. The question is not whether you know. The question is what you do with that knowledge in the next 24 hours, because that window is the only one you actually control. There are two people who started from the same place 12 months ago. Same background, same city, same kind of job, same kind of friends, same kind of potential, sitting dormant, waiting to be activated. The first person decided to wait. Not consciously, no one consciously decides to wait. They just kept doing what was comfortable. They kept consuming instead of building. They stayed in the conversations that felt safe. They told themselves that next quarter, next year, when things settled down, they would make the move they kept talking about making. The second person made one uncomfortable decision, just one. They stopped waiting for the environment to approve of their next move, and they made it anyway. They started the thing. They had the conversation. They cut the habit. They began imperfectly, quietly, without announcement. 12 months later, those two people are not in the same place anymore. The gap between them is not enormous in visible terms, not yet. But the direction of their lives has diverged in a way that compounds every single day. One of them is building something with momentum. The other is building a more elaborate reason for why now is still not the right time. In 2026, the speed of that divergence is faster than it has ever been. The tools available to people who are moving create leverage that was not possible 3 years ago. The gap between someone using those tools with intention and someone who isn't is not a slight advantage. It is a structural separation that widens every week the decision is delayed. You know which of those two people you are right now. You don't need anyone to tell you. The question is not whether you know. The question is what you do with that knowledge in the next 24 hours, because that window is the only one you actually control. There is a moment, and if you've ever experienced real growth, you know exactly what this moment feels like, where you stop negotiating with the old version of yourself. It doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't come with a dramatic decision or a public declaration. It comes quietly. It comes in a moment when you realize that the person you have been performing for, the version of you built to fit the room, to manage other people's comfort, to stay small enough to be loved, that version is costing you something you cannot afford to keep paying. And you stop. Not because you have all the answers, not because the path is clear, not because the fear is gone. You stop because the weight of staying has finally exceeded the weight of moving. That is the moment everything changes, not the moment you succeed. That comes later. The moment you decide that who you are becoming matters more than who other people need you to remain. You are at that moment right now. Not metaphorically, literally. Something brought you to this video, to this particular episode, at this particular point in your life. That something is the part of you that already knows. The part that has been patient for a long time and is running out of patience for the performance. The person you are capable of becoming is not waiting for your circumstances to change. That person is waiting for you to stop waiting. Most people spend their whole lives becoming very good at being who they were. Here is what you do in the next 24 hours. You write down one thing, one specific thing, that you have been postponing because of what someone else might think, say, or feel about it. Not a vague aspiration, a concrete action, a conversation you haven't had, a decision you haven't made, a move you haven't started because the approval hasn't arrived. And then you do it, not perfectly, not with full confidence. You do it with whatever you have right now, because waiting for the perfect version of your courage is just a more sophisticated form of the same avoidance you've been practicing. That one action is not the whole journey, but it is the proof, the evidence you give yourself that you are the kind of person who moves even when it's uncomfortable. And identity is built on evidence. Every time you act in alignment with who you're becoming, you make it easier to do it again. Every time you don't, you make it harder. The work is not complicated. The work is just harder than most people are willing to sustain. You are still watching. That already tells me something about you. Hit the subscribe button. More videos like this are coming every day.